It feels like a dream come true to have our own business and receive a $450 million inheritance. Being in command of our own firm and receiving such a sizable amount of money is an incredible feeling. The staff chatted among themselves while my sister-in-law, Mary, happily celebrated my father's fortune. They were exuberant, joyous, and triumphant. My spouse was about to inherit the company and a substantial $3 million as a result of this windfall, rumors had it. One of the workers, sitting next to his perplexed wife, started laughing uncontrollably at this revelation. Pale-faced, my older brother was poring over the will the attorney had given him. His expression grew more serious as he continued to read. Mary screamed when he revealed the contents of the will to her. "Please allow me to introduce myself. I'm Sandra, and I work for my father in his company. I'm 27 years old. I've followed my father's journey of starting from zero to grow his business ever since I was a small child. Over time, it has expanded into a modest-sized business that employs a large number of people. I could perceive my father's struggles even at a young age, particularly when he was initially starting out and had bills to pay off. Even though the business was expanding, I was always driven to help, especially since my mother handled a lot of the back-office work. My goal was to work for the corporation after college, even though my parents urged me to seek my own profession. My dad had put everything he had into it. I knew this choice even before I thought about what I wanted to do for a living after high school. When I started working for my father's company, I was mentored by Jack, a seasoned employee. Despite the fact that I was the daughter of the president, he patiently and impartially led me through the fundamentals of business. He's largely responsible for my comprehension of the company. On the other hand, my brother Keith, who is only 2 years older than I am, went to college to study management. He was proud to tell his friends about our father's company and what he planned to do there. His acquaintances would inquire about his plans after graduation, to which he would confidently reply that he would work for our father's company, eventually rising to the position of president and wouldn't need to look for a job. His pals would be envious of Keith's stable future. They'd ask about his younger sister, and in response, he'd call me a simpleton and a mere high school graduate, implying that he knew something about the inner workings of the organization. He said he would keep me around if he became president, provided I did what he asked. In the meantime, my brother pretended to be acquiring management experience while indulging in luxury and frivolity. He was aware that acting well would win him friends and a plethora of women eager to hang out with the company's future president. My brother made the decision to pursue Mary, the most ostentatious and endearing woman he could discover. Following an opulent nuptial ceremony, they took an opulent honeymoon overseas, constructed a mansion, and began their married life. He said that everything was a step towards becoming the president of the corporation. Mary appeared happy living with Keith, who satisfied all of her wants and gave her permission to enjoy all of life's pleasures. However, I was unable to identify to their opulent way of living. It felt more natural to me to work quietly with my mother at my father's business as a modest employee. Mary used to laugh at me whenever we saw each other at family get-togethers because she thought my simplicity was funny. I would tell her, "I don't aspire to live extravagantly." She would stare at me pityingly, as though I were missing out on the good things in life. "I'm sorry for you," she would say. "You have all this wealth but don't know how to enjoy it. You live with your parents and have no need to work hard. You should have men flocking to you with your title as the president's daughter." My brother continued, "But you're always so modest. No one would even guess your father's position. You treat the other employees just like everyone else. It's surprising." "There's still much I don't understand about my role," I said. My brother shot back, obviously annoyed. "Many of my colleagues are more skilled than I am, so I can't act like a big shot. That's why you're useless," I answered, reminding him not to disparage our co-workers regardless of our status. "A boss should command respect from his subordinates. You should delegate the menial tasks to others." "I suppose my father and I are the only bosses in this house," I said. My father, who had said nothing up until that point, gave a firm nod. Their connection was strained because he and my mother had previously voiced their displeasure of my brother's attitude. My brother and Mary T. would not come to our house again for more than a month after this incident. They continued to live lavishly, eating at fancy restaurants and taking trips to well-known resorts, even though they were no longer among us. However, my parents calmed me, thanking me for my efforts to the business and telling me not to let Keith's remarks get to me. I told them, Keith and Mary can say what they want, resolved not to be swayed by what they thought. Thus, life carried on with all of its ups and downs. While Mary and Keith followed their own wishes, I remained true to who I was and worked quietly with my devoted parents in the family business. The whole point of Keith and Mary's behavior was to give the impression that Keith would one day become my father's company president. During this period, my father was working hard to grow his firm. However, he complained of chest trouble one evening at home. I told him to calm down while I called for an ambulance because I was worried. My father told me he had a letter for me and pointed to a drawer while we waited for the ambulance. When I quickly got the letter, he told me to read it just in case something happened to him. Unfortunately, my father died away and lost consciousness before the ambulance could come. My brother and Mary made an effort in the emergency department, but they were traveling and were unable to be present when our father passed away. 2 days after my father's burial was over, they came back, apparently unscathed. Keith said at the burial, somewhat sloppily, "We're just glad we arrived on time. I never imagined Dad would pass away while we were on vacation." Their lack of regard shocked me, especially since my mother and I were left to manage all the arrangements privately. I went up to my brother and asked him why they couldn't have come back sooner. Then, without hesitation, he answered, "I couldn't because I'd already booked our return flight." Mary then echoed Keith's words, thanking him for his assistance and stating that he intended to take on our father's role in an honorable manner. She then addressed the staff and said, "That's exactly what Keith would do. Everyone is speechless because they're so impressed, right? It's only natural given my dignity." Keith brashly and conceitedly implored me to hurry and take them to the ceremony. I led them, irritated as I was, to the dinner ceremony table, where Keith pretended to be in charge and criticized the food, saying it was of low quality and would ruin our father's reputation. I stood up for my freedom and refused to let my brother control my decisions. Keith's conceit increased when he started giving commands to the other staff members, treating me and their assistants as unnecessary. When I stepped in to stop him from treating Jack, a seasoned employee, disrespectfully, Keith and Mary supported him and responded with even more haughtiness. A man appeared, stopping their blustering, interrupting their behavior. "I apologize for the interruption. Your father entrusted me with overseeing his inheritance affairs as his lawyer, a role he assigned me while he was still alive," the attorney responded. He had told me shortly before he died that he had already spoken with the attorney a few years before, implying that he had anticipated his own demise. When my brother Keith and Mary learned that the lawyer was involved, they greeted him with great enthusiasm and wanted to talk about the inheritance. However, as soon as the attorney brought up the inheritance, Keith started to exhibit symptoms of distress. When the astounding $450 million inheritance and business ownership were brought up, Mary, on the other hand, reacted with pure joy. Mary joyfully revealed to the personnel that the company and Keith's enormous inheritance would soon be transferred, anticipating jubilation from them all. But instead of celebrating, one staff member started laughing uncontrollably, which confused everyone else in the room. As he read the will, Keith, who was seated next to Mary, was in shock. Something unexpected had happened in the will, for his face went pale and he mumbled Mary's name. Mary leant in to see what was wrong because she was curious about the disturbance. Keith's dismay increased upon learning that Sandra, the eldest daughter, would receive the entire business. Keith was shocked and incensed when the lawyer affirmed the will's legality, despite his fierce protests that it was a mistake or the product of his father's failing mental state. In a fit of wrath, Keith questioned the validity of the will and charged his late father with being unwise. But Sandra stepped in, furious at the disregard for our father. She claimed that considering his disinterest in the business, it was inconceivable that Keith would become president. The argument became more heated as Sandra questioned Keith's eligibility for the president, pointing out his lavish way of living and little business acumen. She disclosed that their father had written her a letter outlining how Keith had received an unfair share of resources, leaving him with little inheritance. Startled by this information, Mary began to wonder if it was really fair, as their extravagant spending had not been able to be maintained, considering the genuine bequest from the company. They realized the truth. The $450 million was corporation money, not personal property. This miscommunication was explained by the worker who had laughed before, who emphasized that the large amount belonged to the company and not to them specifically. Keith and Mary were taken aback by this realization and had to confront the truth of their circumstances and the consequences of their choices. In an attempt to dispel the misunderstanding, Mary asked Sandra, "Isn't that something that can be inherited? Indeed, the money from the company is an inheritance for the family, so I'm pretty sure my brother's share is negligible," Sandra clarified. When Mary realized what was going on, her heart fell. Sandra was horrified to learn that the fortune wasn't as much as they had thought. "Oh no, Sandra," she shouted. My brother grabbed the opportunity, getting to his feet as though he had suddenly realized something, and spoke to the staff. None of his co-workers agreed with him, though. "You want your company president to be a plain woman like Sandra? You must believe I'm more qualified to be president. I have the same charisma as my father." Jack took the initiative and gently addressed my brother's accusations. Furious by Jack's remarks, my brother retaliated angrily, saying, "Your predecessor, your father, was a charismatic man who founded the company. However, you and he are not the same person. What you have is arrogance, not charisma." Unfazed, Jack went on, "Keith, you may be an employee of our company, but we, the employees, rarely see you at work." My brother shot back, "That's because I don't have time to do any work for the company. I was too busy networking with others. I couldn't waste time doing work anyone could do." Jack went on, "Sandra worked hard every day to learn more about the company while performing her unobtrusive behind-the-scenes duties. I sense the same sincerity in her as in your father. Sandra is the right person for the job, according to all of us at the company." Touched by the staff's encouragement, I conveyed my appreciation. The staff enthusiastically praised my response, and I bowed deeply, buoyed by their encouragement. "Thank you very much. To be honest, I'm surprised by the suddenness of the news, but having witnessed my father's enthusiasm for the company firsthand, I care about it just as much as you do. I look forward to your continued assistance. All of you here are important friends who have helped our business. Anyone who ignores them is unfit to be an employee, let alone the company president," I said with conviction. My brother was growing more and more agitated over the whole thing. "What in the world are you on about? I'm your brother," he said. "Even if you're my brother, if you become president, you have the authority to fire me." Mary and I left the situation when my brother realized that nobody was supporting him. Keith then lost his work and found it difficult to live on the meager inheritance he had been given before it swiftly ran out. I was outraged by his continual dependency on our family and refused to offer him money, even though he begged for financial assistance. Ultimately, my brother was left to deal with the fallout from his actions by himself, as his friends, who had previously offered him support, turned their backs on him. My brother had to face the hard truth that he had been removed from office as president and replaced by his sister. Mary had imagined herself as the president of the company's wife when she married him, but none of her friends sympathized when their aspirations fell through. My brother and his wife had to make the painful decision to sell their mansion due to financial difficulties. Although the sales revenues brought them some short-term respite, their funds were soon exhausted due to their lack of income. Their declining resources made it difficult for them to pay the necessities of life. They had run out of everything to sell and were in desperate need of employment. Having no prior work experience made it difficult for my brother and his wife to get employment. My brother eventually found a part-time job at a convenience shop, where he was criticized by more junior co-workers who were better at their jobs. Mary, too, could no longer support herself as a stay-at-home mom. Rather, she became a part-time employee and started working as a grocery cashier. She put in a lot of overtime, yet her pay was still very little each month. Conversely, utilizing my background in administrative support, I persisted in aiding the company's expansion in tandem with committed staff members such as Jack. Unintentionally, my brother's predicament enhanced the bonds among co-workers who were committed to upholding my father's legacy. I promised to keep going after the business with my mother. We worked together to honor my father's memory and treasure his soul in paradise. My commitment to the company only grew stronger over time. Using the knowledge I gained from my work behind the scenes, I actively looked for ways to innovate and enhance our processes. Working together with Jack and the rest of our dedicated team, we executed strategic plans that advanced the business. Employee morale held up well after the first blow my brother's leaving created. If anything, his failure served as a lesson in the value of modesty, diligence, and commitment. We became closer to one another as a result of our common dedication to the company's success. During our leadership, the business prospered, and I found myself thinking about my father's vision and his legacy. His relentless work ethic and entrepreneurial zeal acted as beacons of light, encouraging us to overcome obstacles and achieve new heights. Mary and my brother, meanwhile, kept adjusting to the harsh reality of their new situation. They had to face their own limitations and put their endurance to the test as they adapted to life as part-time employees. Nevertheless, there were times of introspection and development amid the difficulties. Once you said to a life of luxury, my brother took comfort in the ease of his new position as he dealt with clients at the convenience store. He developed a fresh understanding of the importance of diligence and modesty. Mary, in a similar vein, accepted her position as a part-time cashier and found fulfillment in the sense of autonomy and purpose it provided. Despite the hard effort, she enjoyed the chance to support their family financially and had a stronger appreciation for tenacity. In my case, I never wavered in my dedication to the business and its future expansion. Driven by a revitalized sense of purpose and my father's legacy, I devoted my life to advancing his vision and paying tribute to his memory. Ultimately, our adventure proved the strength of tenacity and the resiliency of the human spirit in spite of all the difficulties we encountered. And as we look to the future, I have no doubt that we will overcome any obstacles we face together, stronger and more unified than ever.